Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with a special episode
How
called
special is
In.
it, Armando?
It is so special that this was just made up on the fly last week. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with In This Corner. And Jim Bricker has very graciously and very much, I would say, under duress, agreed to come with me for this episode.
Thank you.
We are going to be taking a look at two artists that at this point in their career were so far apart in their musical journey that we thought it would be good to pit them against one another, and musically speaking, of course. Of course.
No mud
And
involved is what you're saying.
no, 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 the mud's been put away. And
Okay.
and just sort of talk about our views on each of these albums and the start of these artists at this point in time in their career, and pretty much see who's going to come out the victor in this, metaphorically speaking, of course. Uh, Again, we have two artists, two female artists that at this point in their career were so far apart in terms of where they were at in their musical careers that we just thought, damn it, it would be fun to pit them against one another. So here we go.
No, we just thought it's Armando thought.
Sure, sure. Okay, all right. Put the blame on me.
I
Okay,
will, good sir.
okay. In this corner, we have Linda Ronstadt with her release of What's New, released September 12th, 1983 for Asylum Records. This album was recorded from June 30th of 1982 to March 4th of 1983. Uh, the album was produced by her manager at the time, Peter Asher, against his wishes. I will put that in there. Um, you have an album of traditional pop and lounge songs. And yeah, I've listened to the album. I shall give you my opinion of this album after Jim gives his opinion and his history with this album. Go ahead,
Do
Jim.
we want to say who's in the other corner first, or do you want to just stay in the one corner?
Okay, we shall go to the other corner. Okay. Okay, and in the other corner, we have one Lisa Dalbello. At this point, she had redubbed herself Dalbello, using her last name to go forward as a solo artist. This is her 1984 release, Whomanfoursays, which is a take on Human Forces, released in 1984 for her label EMI, with a playing time of 42 minutes and 19 seconds. This was recorded in 1984 at Phase One Studios in Toronto. The album was produced by one Mick Ronson. I do believe that if you're a rock enthusiast, you know who he is. And Dalbello. This album has genre listing as new wave and art pop, which I would agree. And just a bit of background, Lisa Dalbello from Toronto, Ontario, well-known Canadian vocalist, multi-instrumentalist. This, I believe, was her second release for EMI. This is her follow-up release to her 1981 album Drastic Measures that was produced by Jim Vallance and Bob Esty. This album saw Human Forces, I should say, saw Lisa Dabello take stock as to the lack of success that she experienced with Drastic Measures. I should say also Drastic Measures also saw her collaborate with such artists as Bryan Adams. And Lisa Dabello at this point had been on the music scene since 1977. Her debut album, self-titled, was produced by one David Foster. I believe you know him, as everyone does, unfortunately, and would bolster such musician assistants on the debut album as Jeff Porcaro, Steve Lukather, as you know, the boys from Toto. Also, she has worked with other musicians as Michael McDonald and Jeff Skunk Baxter in terms of recording sessions. But for Human Forces, she took about 3 years off, 2.5 years basically after the release of Drastic Measures, and she took stock of her career, and she wanted to essentially invent herself and reinvent where she was coming from musically. And damn it, she did. Okay. But we will get into that. So,
Mhm.
the first album that we're going to be talking about is Linda Ronstadt's What's New? And I will pass the virtual mic over to Jim. Please give us your take on your history with this album.
Well, thank you. I'd be happy to. First of all, a little bit of context setting. You are right, Armando, that Linda Ronstadt was like I was going to say the golden girl, but that's not quite the right phrase. She basically was the queen of pop music, rock and pop about this time in the late '70s. Uh, Almost every album that she released went, platinum and then some. Um, she was fairly untouchable. By the time the '80s dawned, she began to kind of spread her wings a little bit, and in getting more variety under what she was doing. For instance, in 1980, she released the album Mad Love, which reflected a lot of the late '70s new wave and punk stuff that was coming out. In fact, there's three Elvis Costello covers on this album, Mad Love. Party Girl, Girls Talk, and Talking in the Dark are all on there. As well as many other covers from songwriters of the era, because that was her wheelhouse, was taking songs written by others. I don't think Linda was much of a songwriter herself, but boy, could she interpret. So that's 1980, and Mad Love, topped the charts darn near, and was very, very successful. Her subsequent album Get Closer in 1982 was really kind of more of a mishmash. It was kind of a mix of rock and pop and country, and there was a cover version of the Knickerbockers tune Lies, which was originally 1965. Uh, Covers of a few different Jimmy Webb songs, including "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress," which is like a knife to the heart. Oh God, I love that song. And then some duets or trios. She does a song on this album with James Taylor, and then another tune with Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris, which later turned
What
into the
formed
trio
the trio?
release.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. But this album was not a success. It was really kind of all over the place, and I think it sort of lacked a coherence that people could really sort of latch onto. So in the middle of all this time in '80 and '82, Linda was beginning, as part of her spreading her wings out a bit, was beginning rehearsals for Broadway shows, and she ended up performing on Broadway from like January '81 through November '82 for a staging of Gilbert and Sullivan's Pirates of Penzance,
That's right.
that she did
That's right.
along with Kevin Kline. So in addition to the pop music that she was making, um, she was on Broadway, just killing it as a soprano, and got rave reviews. Um, so in the middle of all this, she does a number of sessions with producer Jerry Wexler, and she in '81 recorded an album with Wexler of pop standards, which eventually got shelved, but even later eventually made it out as a bootleg called Keeping Out of Mischief. And this is kind of we'll call it the blueprint for what's new eventually became. um, Ronstadt did not like Keeping Out of Mischief. She just wasn't happy with it, but she held a lot of regrets about it because the appeal of those songs was so strong for her. I mean, much like, she did an album later in the '80s called Canciones de mi Padres, if I've got that right, which is basically her love of Mexican and mariachi music that she heard from her parents growing up. Well, Keeping Out of Mischief, which later evolved into What's New, was based out of her love of the Great American Songbook and all of those tunes from like Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Nat King Cole, Billie Holiday, people like that were recording way back in the day. Um, you did say that she had to kind of go. Um, she had a tough road to hoe to convince people to do this album because it was so unlike anything else that was even popular at that time.
Yeah, she had to convince her manager, producer, Peter Asher.
Hmm.
She had to convince Asylum Records, like David Geffen at the time,
Yep.
to go with this, and she really pushed. And
Hmm.
once people said, once she got her teeth into an idea, her musical teeth, let's say, uh, they were basically dragged along until they were convinced that this was the right way to do it, right
Yep.
road to go down. So yeah,
Right. And so she did get this bee in her bonnet. She ended up contacting Nelson Riddle, who was the conductor and arranger of many of Sinatra's greatest albums. And they, kind of set their mark on, we'll call it rehabilitating the Great American Songbook. They ended up doing three albums. The first was What's New. The second was Lush Life in 1984, and For Sentimental Reasons came out in 86. But between the three albums, by 2010, they had sold like 7 million copies just in the US. So these were monster hits. And
yeah,
my
yeah.
experience of them was kind of started with What's New when it came out in 1983. I'm like, okay, I'm certainly familiar with Linda Ronstadt because my parents had these Sinatra records, these Ella records, these Nat King Cole records. I was certainly aware of the types of music that she was going for. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this a whirl. And I bought the album, and from the first track on, it was just to die for me. And the reason is just basically, well, the songs are, you know, it's called the Great American Songbook for a reason. These are
Yeah.
great, great songs, melodically, harmonically. What they're imparting um, lyrically is just usually so touching, so tender, and so emotionally powerful that they're just hard to deny.
Yeah.
And then, secondly, Linda's command. I think she was just, without peer at this point in her career, having gone through the country and pop, thing to do at her time on Broadway. It's like her command is just amazing, whether it's, just very soft and subtle, expressing kind of a tenderness or longing or playfulness, to just going full power. You
Mhm.
know, she's I mean, there is just no doubt that she could sing and sing her ass off.
You
Because
said ass, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead.
I did, and I meant it, and I still mean to
Mhm.
listen to this album. There are some people who like are hitting their highest, most powerful range of their vocals, and you can hear like a little bit of strain going on. That maybe that this is just a little bit out of their comfort zone. Uh-uh. Ronstadt is just a voice that glides and feels like silk. Doesn't matter if it's this real quiet intonation or this powerful "I still love you so" that ends What's New. It's just astounding, her vocal command and ability to kind of rise, with and above the orchestra. The songs that are on here, again, it's the Great American Songbook. What's New? I've Got a Crush on You from Gershwin's. Guess I'll Hang My Tears Out to Dry. Crazy He Calls Me. Someone to Watch Over Me, another Gershwin standard.
Mhm.
I Don't Stand a Ghost of a Chance with You, which was originally a Bing Crosby tune from like 1932. Um, the standout to me on this album is this song called What'll I Do by Irving Berlin.
Yeah.
Um, this is one that he wrote that's autobiographical, that his fiance had been sent to Europe by by her disapproving father. The father did not want his daughter kind of running around and hooking up with Irving Berlin, and he wrote this as, you know, a song for longing for, it's like, you know, his fiance that he could not have. And but eventually the father lost, and she did end up marrying Mr. Berlin here. But yeah, this is a song from 1923, originally from, you know, Paul Whiteman and his orchestra, which old jazz fans will, you know the significance of Paul Whiteman. Um, the album concludes with the two tunes, Lover Man, Where Can You Be, and Goodbye, which was kind of a closing theme song of the Benny Goodman Orchestra way back in the day, but, you know, recorded by Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald. Um, the, I was immediately taken with this album, not only because of the quality of the songs and Linda's voice, but sonically from a production standpoint, it's it's lush. The orchestrations in Nelson Riddle's arrangements are to die for. They're
Ladies and
just so
gentlemen, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Jim's actions meant that the album was dripping with lushness. Yes, just dripping.
absolutely.
Yes.
Some albums drip with Mellotron.
Some albums drip with lushness. Yes, yes. We need to
Exactly,
put it in
exactly.
context as your hand with your hand movements. Okay. So no,
This is
I
not some
understand.
Goomba thing. So,
Yeah, no, no Goomba, senor. Hey, oh, Monguch. No, 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 it's not that. No, 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 it's not
uh,
like, okay, go on. Go
this
on.
album is about as far from "Hey Goomba, stupido" as you could
Yeah, yeah.
imagine.
See,
Um,
no. Okay, don't even start with me with that. Okay.
all right, just
I
cut.
get it. I get it. I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah, I've from the minute I heard this, I just absolutely adored it. And you know, there's a lot of great music that came out in the 80s, and I'm glad this did, because it kind of took these tunes out of the relegation of elevator music, frankly, and granny music, and put them back in the public consciousness of like, no, this is real, man. This stuff is
Yeah.
has substance, it has heart, it has longing, and it has a presence and a resonance that still matters, you know, today. And you know, I'm not going to compare and contrast like what was happening here lyrically with other songs that were going on in the 80s. I guess we have Dalbello to kind of talk about that with um, in a
There's a
minute.
yeah.
But yeah, to
Yeah.
me, this is just an absolutely outstanding record. Again, not only because it resurrects this whole subgenre of pop music,
Yeah.
um, but it's also just so freaking well done that, you know, selling, you know, this and the two companion albums with it, selling 7 million copies in the US.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Every one of those sales is worth it, because this stuff is just outstanding.
Well, I'll give you my opinion of Rondstadt after we talk about Dalbello, and you can give me your opinion of
Sure.
Dalbello after. With, let me get my notes here. With
Whomanfoursays.
Whomanfoursays, with Dalbello, I need to give you a bit of context as to her background. Lisa Dalbello released her debut album in 1977. She was signed to MCA Records, and the album was produced by David Foster. I don't believe this was one of his 16 Grammys that he's won. I don't believe that. But we won't go into that. Lisa Dalbello started out with the debut album as more of a soul R&B singer. And at the time, in terms of the people helping her out on this album, again, you had the members of Toto helping her out. And the album really didn't go anywhere. Um, whether it was poor representation from management or through, poor record company management in terms of RCA, MCA, not promoting it. I do remember hearing at this point in time that the MCA told her that they were going to give her tickets to the Junos away to somebody else. That she
Oh,
basically had to get her
okay.
own ticket to go to the Junos. The Junos, ladies and gentlemen, are Canada's version of the Grammys, basically celebrating and Canadian music talent and achievement. So right out of the gate, she was struggling with getting known as a serious music artist. She would go on to release Pretty Girls in 1978 through her own record company called Talisman Records, or self-produced, working also with other artists, Jeff Skunk Baxter on guitars and doing helping her out in the studio. Michael McDonald on background vocals. I do believe Patrick Simmons from Doobie Brothers was also helping her out. So she had the caliber, she had the talent that was helping her out. She signed again, that went nowhere. I do remember seeing footage of her doing a photo shoot in 1979 and not very comfortable in her in what she was supposed to portray in the photos that were taken of her. Because she's standing there, the fans blowing on her. She's like telling the guy, and he's like, "Oh, you look great," with the cameraman taking the photos. And she's like, "What do you want me to do? I don't know what you want me to do." So she kind of seemed lost at this point because she was at this point letting people direct her movements and her actions and her like dictate what was going to happen. She signed a deal with Capitol Records, released Drastic Measures in 1981. She was working with producer Bob Estee, also with Jim Valance, working with Brian Adams, writing songs. Uh, she did basically what was expected of her. She did, at this point, record the theme song for a TV movie called The Eyes of Dorian Gray, which, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And she does a fantastic vocal performance. Now, Lisa Dalbello, in terms of a vocalist, for me, she can go from the most emotive, emotional, quiet vocal to a level that can crack your ribs. I mean, the most piercing vocal delivery that I've ever heard coming out of anybody, okay? Just very powerful and very emotional. After the, I guess, relative failure of Drastic Measures, she walked away for a bit. She took stock of what she wanted out of her career and out of her life, mostly her career. And she thought, I need to take control of what I want to do. And I need to do things my own way. She got a call from Mick Ronson, who at that point was producing other Canadian artists such as the Payolas. Um, he saw a uh, documentary on Lisa Dalbello on CBC, on the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation channel, and he contacted her management. And at this point, she was being represented by Roger Davies. Now, Roger Davies was also responsible for managing Tina Turner, Pink, among other artists. Mick Ronson contacted Lisa and said, "We should make some music together." Okay. And after meeting, I believe that they hit it off, and she felt that this person understands what I want to do. And the uh, the album Whomanfoursays was the end result of their what they considered to be fruitful collaboration. All the instrumentation on this album is done by either Dalbello or Ronson. Dalbello handles drums, keyboards, bass, and Ronson handles guitars and keyboards. This album saw Lisa Dalbello go in a completely different direction. If anybody out there watching is familiar with Lisa Dalbello's past catalog, she saw Whomanfoursays as a beginning of something different for her. The lead off single, Gonna Get Close to You, was all over the airwaves in terms of Canadian television, music channels at the time. Much Music was just starting up, and her look had changed. She had changed, well, things, her hair, like makeup, everything was completely different of hers, about her. And even from the album cover featuring the indigenous makeup that she put on. Now, there are 9 tracks on this album, again, with a playing time of 42 minutes and 19 seconds. I gotta tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this album grew on me. It really did over time. I've known of this album since I was 13, or at least I'm gonna get close to you. The other single that was released from the album is called Animal, which starts off side two. And the change in direction musically for me worked 1000%. Okay. The themes on the album deal with largely the role of the female in society. Okay. The expectations of women in society. Being a dutiful wife, as in songs like Devious Nature. Songs of being subservient to your man, as it were, as in the song She Pretends. Wait for an Answer, which would be eventually be covered by Heart on their Bad Animals album, covers a person's patience running low with someone being in a relationship with that person. Animal, which starts off side one, features a duet with Carol Pope of the band Rough Trade, and it is basically talking about we may be different, we may have different skin color, we may come from different religious or cultural backgrounds, but at the root of it all, we are still equal. We're still one of the same. We're not different. We are, in fact, the same. We are animal at the root of it all. Other songs, such as Cardinal Sin, which follows Animal, tackle the Roman Catholic Church and the hypocrisy that still is quite prevalent in the Catholic Church. Um, Path of Least Resistance is one of the most gut-wrenching songs because it deals with rape and possible incest. And the fact that this character in this song is helpless. Okay. Target, My Eyes Are Aimed at You, which finishes off the album, is a song that even to this day, I think I know what it's about, but it is wrapped up in a mystery for me in terms of its layers and its complex arrangement and its emotional delivery. Her vocals are treated for the vocal delivery on it, but it is very emotional. Basically, for me, what it's saying is if you're in a bad that this person is in a bad relationship and whatever you think you're going to do to me, that you're going to hurt me, you've already lost because I've already figured you out. You're not going to win. So from the get-go, and I should also have failed to mention, Going to Get Close to You was covered by Queensryche in 1986 for their album Rage to Order. Okay. So just taking a back step here. To me, Musically, it is quite diverse, quite heavy. I wouldn't say heavy in terms of heavy in terms of musical approach because it's a vast difference from what she did before. This is not a chanteuse coming at you. This is someone who this is someone who is coming at you from her own point of view.
This ain't no David Foster record.
No, thank God. No. Uh Actually, one of the lyrics in Target My Eyes Are Aimed at You is no, one of the lyrics that really gets me on that song is my weapon is my point of view. So you think you can control me? Get that done out of your head, because you fucking can't. That is where she's coming from. It is coming from a place, this whole album is coming from a place of human experience, specifically the female human experience. There, everything will be okay. Just do what we say and you'll be okay. No, I'm in control of what I want to do musically. I'm in control of what I want to do in terms of my look, my cosmetically, in terms of my feelings emotionally. I am in control, not you. And that's where this music is coming from. Okay? It is powerful. It is, for me, impactful. It is making a statement that this woman, this powerhouse of a vocalist, can do whatever the hell she wants. I will reiterate when we did that interview with Don Brightopt, and I mentioned about, I could see Dalbello doing some background vocals on the latest Monkey House release on Crashbox, and his eyes lit up like, oh, Dalbello, she's a powerhouse, she's a local legend. Yes, because she is an individual that felt that she was pushed and pushed to the point where she had to push back musically and do whatever she wanted to do on her terms. That's not to say that the album was successful. I do believe it reached number 97 in the Canadian charts. But I do feel that for her point of view, this was the statement musically that she wanted to make. Okay. And that's not to say that Capitol always agreed with her, because the follow up album, which took 3 years to release and complete and release, because as I've said before, she was working on some demos. The record company and management didn't like them. She came up with a pseudonym, Bill DeSallo, and said that, oh, I'm working on these tracks with Bill DeSallo and with Bill. And once the record company heard them, oh, these are great, keep going. They had no idea that she made it up. So she had to dupe the management and the record company to get her way. Do you know what kind of determination and kind of guts that takes? She wasn't going to give up. It's unfortunate that after the release of her album Whore in 1996, she decided to officially retire from recording, which to me as a fan is completely unfortunate and disgusting, that she felt that she wasn't given enough of an opportunity to express herself. But getting back to Human Forces, sorry, to me, this album, we were talking on another about other ideas about albums that are turning points for artists. To me, this was a necessary step and a major turning point for Dalbello. Jim is correct. This is not a David Foster production in style and arrangement whatsoever. And thank God for that. But I've given my spiel. I can't do any more than what I've said. So, but in terms of the idea for In This Corner, this idea was that we would present two artists that were at this time pretty much in the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of their musical approach and their musical ideas. So, in my opinion of what's new, I do like the music. I think it's exemplary. I think it's fantastic. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that Linda Ronstadt is not, I'm not saying that she's a bad singer. At times, I don't know whether or not her voice suits the music.
Hmm.
I understand where she's coming from, and and again, maybe she and Dalbello in this case are alike because they pushed ahead and did whatever they wanted to do musically, um, against the wishes of record company and management, etc. Maybe I do need to sit with this album some more. It is quite a short album, only, 36 minutes and 35 seconds, quite short, 9 songs in total. It is good musically, it is top notch. It is just perfection. I just think that sometimes her vocals for the songs really don't match up quite a bit, but
Hmm.
that's I guess you'd say it's nitpicking. I'm not used to sitting and listening to traditional pop and lounge music. I'm not. But you have opened up my ears and my eyes to another avenue to possibly explore, you know?
Yeah, well, I think what's new kind of complements from a genre standpoint the tracks that were laid on the Sinatra album Live at the Sands, because it's that
Yeah.
same
Vibe.
oeuvre, if that's the right
Yeah.
word. It's the same
Yeah.
songbook, you know.
It's the same vibe. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely. And you want to talk
just a
about
little less Vegasy, you know.
you want to talk about, hey, oh, like guy down, my friend Joe down the corner. You can't get much more than that than, Frank Sinatra at the Sands, okay, which is what I liked about the album. So, and
Hmm.
I actually bought a copy of the Sands for Bob, so he wanted that. So it did influence me. So let's leave it at that. But okay, what is your opinion of Human Forces?
So this was my re-listening to it, and it was a re-listen recently. I gave it about, 2 or 3 spins, and that's on the back of doing listening to it another 2 or 3 times a number of months ago when we were kind of exploring doing a
Yeah,
second series of episodes of oh, I forget what we called it. It's kind of,
hidden buried treasure.
buried treasures, yes. So, in fact, I think if I recall correctly, I kind of shocked you where I'm like, "Oh yeah, I've heard this." You were like,
You
"You
have?
have?"
Yeah, I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right, that's right, that's
yeah.
right.
So, so for me, I kind of put it in. There's like 3 main points that I have of this. I should also say my first experience with Lisa Del Bello before listening to Human Forces is one that I barely, you know, that I wasn't conscious of, and that's I've mentioned this a few times. She is singing the harmony and like the female vocal line on the Boz Scaggs hit Miss Sun. And, I didn't recognize that name, but I've liked Miss Sun from the early 80s,
Yeah,
when I heard it, and Del Bello's vocals, which I only found out a couple of years ago that was her. Um, it has always been one of the strengths of that song.
yeah,
Much like in the way uh ah, is it Mercy Clayton on Gimme Shelter, and then like Tawatha G on Roxy Music's Avalon,
yeah,
if I
yeah.
have those names right. If not, I'm sorry.
Hmm.
So similar, very strong female vocal. It's like, wow, this has got a character and a timbre. It's really carrying things. So character and timbre, let's kind of start there. Lisa is a really, really strong singer. Again, she's got, a fantastic range, whether she's got this whisper quiet approach to things, or whether she's kind of full on, melody,
Blasting, yeah,
with kind
yeah,
of all points in between. She's a really, powerful vocalist, and I could see why Don's eyes lit up. It's like, oh, Lisa Del Bello, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Um, the about this album though, for me, it's got, maybe it's just the version that I've been listening to. Maybe it's got poor bit mapping to it, if you will, but it sounds really thin to me, like a really thin 80s kind of production. And again, this could be the copy that I'm listening to,
Okay.
but it kind of brings the whole thing down for me as a listener. So that's not taking away from Lisa's ability to sing and her power, but it kind of affects the album overall for me.
Yeah.
This is a 1984 record, so it's peak times of Prince. Um, so there's a strong Prince vibe through a lot of this record for me, and I guess the chief inspiration for that, it was either going to be 1999 or like the very, like when Purple Rain first came out. Maybe Lisa was influenced by that in some ways. I don't know. Do you have any insights into that?
I don't see this in any way tying in with Prince or Purple Rain or 1999. Obviously, there's programming on the album.
Mm-hmm.
There's Fairlight programming that was done on
Mm-hmm.
the album, but I don't see any connection between this and Prince. I think this is completely opposite of what Prince was doing. But
Mm-hmm.
no. But in terms of musical approach and arrangement, so yeah.
And maybe I need to give a closer listen to 1999 and Purple Rain to kind of compare, but that's sort of like the immediate, I'll say, musical palette impression that I had.
Mhm.
Lyrically, of course, it's going different places, and a lot of it. When we spoke with Don, he I think he mentioned like a very Peter Gabriel kind of nature
Yeah,
to how Dalbello approached things, and I kind of hear that
I do too.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
in the lyrics, especially like the album Us, where it's really dealing with personal and relationship type things.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of strong connection there for me.
Hmm.
Um, I guess overall for me, the lyrics, they're confrontational and they're kind of antagonistic, in terms of, I need to establish my own identity as a woman, which is fine. And, you bastard men or you bastard church members or whatever, here's my stake that I'm putting down.
Hmm.
And, you're all been served, you're all on notice. And so that's kind of the antagonism and confrontation that I hear in this.
Hmm.
And it's, I think because of that antagonism, it kind of left, I'm a big melody freak. We've talked about that. It kind of lessens the ability of there to be a melody that's kind of pleasing to sing or to hear. There's kind of a punk ethos here of, up yours. And,
Oh, I would
while
say
she's
that.
not,
Yeah.
yeah, while she's not, I don't think she's screaming on any of the songs. I mean, she's
Hmm.
pretty close, pretty close in some spaces. And to me, this album seems like I'll call it a spiritual antecedent to Jagged Little Pill. Canadian women, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Alanis was familiar with the Whomanfoursays, and that inspired her in some ways. I don't know.
I
Um,
I wouldn't know.
yeah, I
But
mean, overall, it's a good it's a good listen. It's but again, from the production standpoint, it's kind of its time to me. But I would go back and listen to it again to sort of figure out what I could wring out more from Lisa Dalbello as a vocalist, and it'd be interesting to kind of say, all right, um, I I haven't I don't think I've heard any of She or Whore, which were the two albums that came after this, right?
yeah, yeah.
I did do a little bit of sampling of the albums that came before this, kind
Hmm.
of more the David Fostery type of records where she was trying to be put in. I don't know if she's trying to be put in like the pre-Sugar Walls Sheena Easton mode. I don't know what they had in mind for her,
Yeah.
but but yeah, this is definitely a 180, and it's like I said, she's definitely planting a stake in the ground, and and I get that. I'm glad I listened to it. It doesn't kind of like make it into my top of 84 list. You said it was like it topped at 92 in Canada
Something like
on the
90
charts.
97.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean it's fine for what it is, but clearly, if we kind of take the boxing metaphor, which we had in this
Yeah.
as the setup here, whether there was mud or not, I would definitely to me I would give the edge to Linda just because of the strength of the album as in its entirety,
Mm-hmm.
from like
Mm-hmm.
production and writing and vocals and all that stuff.
Okay. Well, for me, given the fact that Dalbello felt that she had to take stock of herself as an individual and
Yep.
just decide not to be, I guess, pushed around.
Hmm.
However gentle the pushing was, she just decided that she needed to take ownership of her career and just do
Hmm.
what she wanted to do. And as luck would have it, she met up with someone, Mick Ronson, who followed her lead, was totally committed to her doing this, and and followed her muse, basically just followed her ideas. And she was
Yeah.
someone that wasn't going to be pushed around. I mean, overall, this album is a musical and a lyrical declaration of saying, as a woman, as a member of the quote unquote weaker sex, I'm not going to
Hmm.
take any shit anymore from anybody, and I'm not going to be pushed around. So to me, I give the edge to Dalbello because she did it herself on her own terms. Whether it was successful or not, she
Hmm.
did what she wanted to do. And
Right.
for an artist, it was that at that point had minimal success with, I would say, with drastic measures and pretty girls and the debut. I would say that to her this was like a make or break situation. I'm either going to do this my own way. If you think about Rush, for example, they released their two albums or three albums.
Yeah.
After Carissa Steele, Mercury Records said to Rush, "We need the hit. If you don't get the hit, you're off Mercury." They looked
Hmm.
at one another and thought for 30 seconds, okay, should we write the hit? No, we're going to do it our way. Boom, make or break. Luckily for them, it broke, like it hit. I think for Lisa Dalbello, this album was more of a personal triumph.
Hmm.
And yeah, she took more of a pop kind of road. I mean, she produced everything herself. She worked with Bernard Edwards. Uh, David Gilmour helped her out with a guitar solo. Uh, but it had more of a pop element. So she lost a bit of that, I guess you'd say, art pop edge to it. And horror took on more of heavy grunge rock kind of a feel.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, I personally would give the musical edge to Dalbello for this. That's,
Yeah.
I think we're um, at a draw in terms of a match here.
And
Um,
that's actually kind of what when we were kicking this idea, when it sort of blossomed out of nowhere last week when we were talking, I think one of the expressions I heard either Bill or Ken um, throw out there was that, well, it's kind of like comparing apples and armadillos. I mean, these are really two totally different types of records where Linda is kind of doing a homage to the music that meant so much to her and kind
yeah,
of resonated within her heart and soul and spirit. Dalbello's, purpose was, a declaration of independence and, kind of really being strong on that. So yeah, two different purposes. So,
I yeah, I would say it would be like comparing Led Zeppelin to Liberace. You can't.
well, they both start with L.
And
So
that's where
there's
it
that. There,
begin
there goes your theory right there.
that's where it begins and ends, really. I mean, that's so, but
Someone has a brother George in there somewhere. Come on.
exactly, exactly. But all right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it in this corner. What's new versus Who Men For Says. If you are familiar with either one of these albums, please put your comments down below. There are no right or wrong answers, just opinions. This was just a friendly little last minute idea and a little friendly verbal drawing back and forth to see who was going to come out the victor. But this was a draw. So, again, we'd like to know your opinion on these albums. Please put them down below. And again, I'm going to plug this. We are working on an idea for a series called Going for the One, where Jim, Ken, and Bill are going to be discussing their 30 favorite debut albums. That's the title, Going for the One. It's going to be airing for the month of September. Please stay tuned. It's coming up, and I'm going to be hosting. God help us one and all. And it's going to be fun, you know?
And stay
So,
tuned for our next version of In the Corner, where we're going to have Wendy O. Williams versus Alison Krauss. It'll be a barn burner.
yep, yep. We do love to torture ourselves, don't we? Anyways, well, listen, no, I do not consider listening to Linda Ronstadt or Dalbello as torture. Quite the opposite.
Oh, I didn't take it that way.
No, of course. Thank you. And I just didn't want people to take it that way. Uh, Everyone knows my affection for Dalbello. Uh, I just wanted to get my point across, and I think we both achieved that most successfully. Anyways, ladies and
Your points,
gentlemen,
your points were well made, sir. Thank you.
as were yours, as were yours. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please click like and subscribe, and do hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content we got coming up. And we are again working on more shows aside from Going for the One, and we're going to get them to you as soon as we possibly can. All right? Please look after yourselves and one another. Have a great day. Bye for now.